Hello, everyone. This is Marita, one who catches lightning, with the Path of Ish podcast, Walking with Our Shadow, where we share ancient indigenous teachings of remembrance, all so we can walk and learn how to walk a path of radical self-love. Hello, everyone. It's Marita, one who catches lightning, with the Path of Ish. Here, as always, happy to be here and trying some new things. So if you are seeing me on YouTube Live, which might be happening right now, which I'm not sure if I connected this Riverside correctly, well then welcome. And if you're interested in seeing these and being able to access some really fun behind the scenes, I mean fun, uncut, with my cats jumping up and down and around, which I find really interesting that they're not in here right now. Usually, oh, that might be her. I have one cat, Wonder, that loves being in the studio. This is the cat room, the baby room, as we call it. So if you're interested in finding those things or also joining us in other fun things, I did start a Patreon. Love for you to check it out to support this podcast so we can keep it as a beautiful offering. When you're supporting me in this podcast, you are supporting Indigenous elders and Indigenous voices that are alive. And so please consider donating and becoming a patron. Un patrón, como dicen. Muy bien, empezamos. So, as we allow ourselves to the honesty that is possible for us today, I want to kind of just bring that into the circle. And I want you to take a moment in your own way to call the directions and call your people to the circle. I will, of course, cue a circle opening, but I want you to know that even though I teach from specific traditions and, to my students, that we welcome all traditions, all people, because we have an opportunity to recognize that the other is not something apart. And we recognize that we are here not to fix the other or to carry the other or to become a burden, but to truly witness. And then from that witnessing, if we are allowed the opportunity for a deeper relationship or a next step, then we do so, each person retaining their sovereignty. And so recognizing the sovereignty of all living creatures and beings, even single cell organisms, even the elements. We call forth the imagery of circle that includes all, that allows all, that refreshes and revives all. And so we call upon the guardians of the East, the South, the West, and the North as we come back here again to the East, asking to enter into this circle. And we ask this circle to hold us in this conversation, this creative conversation, this musings, this opportunity to be in the moment now. And so let us take our 3 breaths as we settle into the circle, as we allow ourselves to accept the route that Mother Earth gives us based on our relationship with her. Settling in. Taking that first breath in and out through the nose. calling our mind into this time and into this place. Second breath in and out through the nose. Calling our body into this time, this place and space, this circle. In and out through the nose. Calling our essence into this time, this place, this circle, this opportunity of being in deep relation. That was a good one. We are going to welcome into the circle a beautiful, intriguing conversación, question, comment, way of beingness, right? Because if we repeat something over and over, right, its creation becomes a habit of being, because we are action-oriented beings, right? We take action, acción. Therefore, the power of our thoughts really write the possibility of a scenario. And the reason that I want to bring that in, and I know we hear this a lot from many people, the power of thoughts and things like that, is just really to, one more time, let's just take one more breath and connect to our mind. And to the power, the processing power that it has, this beautiful computer that is running many programs simultaneously for us to just exist and be here. It's regulating, hopefully, doing a good job of regulating our nervous system. It's actually firing, right? Allowing us to move, to talk, to breathe, to swallow without thinking. The program of life at its basic. And then there's a layerings of programs that includes social conditioning. And a lot of that includes words. And the reason that I'm talking about words is I've been talking a lot in my classes. We've been studying creation stories. And, when people come on here in the podcast, I always ask them, the one question I ask them is, what is your, not scripted, but the one that they know and can anticipate is, what is your creation story? And sometimes they're people that I've known for a long time. Sometimes there are people that are brand new. But what I realize over and over, even when I tell my creation story, it is always changing. The moment holds a part of that story and those words being remembered. And so every time that we meet someone or something and tell them our creation story, we become that for them. But we are always creating and recreating who we are. And in all the creation stories that we are sitting with in both our cacao and cosmology class, in our cacao facilitator class, in our Jaguar circles, what I find very curious is that from the multiple traditions that we are having and allowing the stories to be told, and I say allowing, we are being allowed the stories to be told from these traditions, is that in the beginning, there was a time of no words. There was a time when the earth rested, stood still to a degree. And it wasn't until you see in these creation stories that you see one God tell the other, or two gods come together and think of something, and then it is. And so there's something about the power of just the mind to be able to imagine. And in that imagination, there becomes a way of life in that imagination, as if when you are dreaming, you are in a dreaming state of existence. And the reason that I want to bring that in is because I think it's very important for us to recognize what we create and truly the power that we have to create. I think, therefore I am. I exist. I have a reflection of myself. I envision myself. And since vision imagination, that from creating from a possibility, as we stay in that question, we then enter into co-creation with other beings, including humans, and then humans create societies. And the reason that I'm taking time to go over this again is that sometimes it just lands with the right words at a certain time. That is why the telling and retelling of a creation story is so important, because at one point you might finally tell the story of yourself, where you are not just in the third person, you are living it. And your remembering and your reflection of that journey allows you to be present to your life in a way that you never have been able to be. And one of the reasons it is hard for people to live in the present moment, I believe it is because I think it might be so, because we have in our instinct and our nature this unconscious, which we then becomes conscious, will to live. And what I mean more specifically, words troubling sometimes, is our overcoming program, the program to overcome, the program to continue fighting, the program to live. I'm not saying that it is a bad program or a good program. I'm saying, isn't it an interesting program? By having a program of overcoming that will to live, that fight for life, it means that because we have this program, it is preparing us, therefore it is acknowledging that in the greater world there will be difficulties, there will be problems, there will be overwhelm, there will be defeat, there will be fill in the blank. By allowing ourselves that as a baseline of the creation of this world and these multiple universes that we are living in, just like we have a program to just operate and breathe and be able to do bodily functions and keep alive, there are certain programs in us to continue that life, right? Everything on this planet is fighting to live. Therefore, if everything is fighting over a finite amount of resources, right, the demand is greater than what is there, then of course there will be a clash. The reason I want to English sometimes has really weird words that I find really are too simple, such as the word normalize. I think it's too simple. I think it's not complex. I don't feel that English holds the complexity of language that a lot of indigenous languages have or other languages. And that's really interesting to bring that up, because that means that just speaking this language and the fact that this podcast is in this language means that it is limited in a language that has so many limitations and programming in it that it doesn't allow for more life. So even English itself, this language or any language, is limited. It is more a language of functionality, a language of conquering, a language of simplifying everything so that you can move quickly, conquer more. And so I find it challenging to speak in this language when students come for more, for the meaning behind the possibility of words. But when words are so, it's hard. And the reason I want to say normalize but don't want to say normalize is that let us say a way of being, because we all have different ideas of what normalized means, including those who exist in a normalized mode of oppressing others. But as we come full circle around this conversation, when we really look at the word to overcoming and we look at it as a verb in the Oxford language, it tells us this is a word that we've created to define something that we find in this life. And many people find a way to live that is different from others. Some find and fight for the individual and don't care about the whole. Some fight for the whole and don't care the individual. But isn't there a way to be in that middle ground, to remain sovereign in yourself, as well as acknowledge the effect that you have on others? So this word and the title of this podcast is Overcoming the Real Obstacles. And what I'm saying is not just is language the obstacle, but overcoming the word overcoming. And having a conversation that allows us the space to know that you can remain in your sovereignty when you are overcoming something. I see so many people when they are trying to overcome something, they're asked to lose their sovereignty. It almost becomes the second way of being. Well, I will overcome this, right? Because we live in a society that wants people to look one way, speak one way, act one way. I mean, we really do. Because we don't want complications. I never grew up in a world like that. I grew up in a world full of people from around the world speaking several languages. So for me, my normal is difference. My normal is conflict. And not conflict in the sense of, that's interesting that I'm saying that, not conflict in the sense that I have to overcome it and just become part of this beige reality of life, but overcoming, knowing that conflict, that sometimes conflict arises because there's a lack of understanding, because we are limited. We're limited in our language, we're limited in the understanding of who we are, and we're limited in the understanding of others. Unfortunately, I feel like when I see people talking about overcoming these days, what they're really talking about is, we do not accept you, or I am not being accepted. My sovereignty is at stake here. You're not supposed to overcome a culture or a person or their way of being. But yet we have found ourselves sliding backwards as we create this war or this cry to rally to overcome change. And when we're talking about overcoming our differences, it's not saying I will accept you as you are and recognize that your difference is so important, because that allows you to be you and me to be me. And then maybe we can find a way to work together. No, instead, overcoming has become, I need to overcome you because you are a threat to me and you are a threat to the resources that I believe should be mine, because I believe in manifest destiny, or I believe in going out and being a missionary and telling everyone that their way and what they believe is wrong. I'm here to save you. Why don't we just call it what it is? It's gentrification. It's white supremacy. It's the annihilation of people who don't believe your beliefs. It's colonization. And I see that seep into individuals in their beingness as they try to overcome themselves instead of to accept themselves. Instead of try to stay curious about, really, how does my mind operate? Wow, it's different from others. I didn't know. I thought this was quote unquote normal. We have this weird idea of being normal. We want to be normal. We want to be like everyone. because we don't want to have to face the rejection from the quote unquote normative way of being. Because their rejection is because they are trying to overcome, defeat, overpower, overwhelm, succeed in dealing with the problem that becomes you because you do not, quote unquote, normalize. And so when I work with people one-on-one or when they're in my classes, it's many times what I see, because we are on this path of radical acceptance and self-love, is the struggle to accept the different or how different you are from what society has decided the program of normal is, or the program of safe is, or the program of succeeding is. And so you have people, individuals every day rejecting their sovereignty, rejecting their uniqueness, rejecting the one beautiful thing or the many beautiful things, right? That makes them separate from this idea of the whole, because the whole in Western colonized culture is just everyone being the same, acting the same, blah, blah. No color, no texture, no sound, no song, no dance, no raised emotions, no hot, fiery food, no passion. Just the wasteland, the desert of normalization. Nothing can live there. What nature teaches us, what nature reminds us of every day, is diversity. You don't see one tree telling the other tree to be like that tree. You don't see them being mean to each other, telling them that they're, I mean, maybe, some can, but they're not out there. They're not as attached to an idea of the latest fashion. They probably, and based on talking to several of them, millions of them, actually encourage the diversity. Because they're witnessing each other grow in one space. And if they grow different, maybe they can share with each other what is more beneficial. Overcoming the real obstacle is overcoming the conditioning that humanity has created for itself when they separated from nature, thinking that they were greater than. And with that program of greater than, the obstacle that they decided to overcome after nature was the diversity of humans themselves. There are all these posts these days about rewilding yourself. allowing yourself your wildness, your individuality, your individuation, your opportunity to be completely, uniquely yourself. And we call that wild. But any step back to the nature of our possibility creates and allows us a greater connection to a whole or an all that is accepting of change, that is accepting of not just one way or one truth, that is accepting and witnessing the lessons that we have created for ourselves as we reside with the question, in the beginning. In your beginnings and your many beginnings throughout the day, what finally is created or thought of from the stillness of possibilities? Do you go towards the possibility of truly being your beautiful, amazing self and accepting yourself and not caring what a society that was never created to accept humans in their true humanity, animalistic ways? Are you trying to be accepted by something that was literally constructed never to accept you? Or are you going to live your life uniquely, passionately, you? We're living in a time where rights are being rolled back, where humans are deciding that other humans are not worth or their humanity not worth protecting. Because they are protecting their normal societal ways that are actually set up to reject them at the core of their possibility. Yet the program promises acceptance, and humans will do anything to belong. Just as we have a program to breathe, to overcome, just as this world has a program of challenges, one of the programs, or you could call wounds, that humans have, the one thing that motivates them, because you got to motivate us, right? You have to motivate, to solve, to ask, to do, to create, to change. There must be motivation, right? If you have ever written a book or written a screenplay, or even watching them, you're always asking yourselves, what's the character's motivation? What's going to make them act? Well, there are many tactics and strategies to make people act. grief, despair, joy, fear. But the greatest motivator of all is love. Oh, I was cleaning. Love. To be loved. To have the security of what we think love is, or what humans have created love to be. I hope that we can find a way to look at the challenge and the dissonance inside of us that seeks to belong and seeks to be loved, not as something where we try to overcome and overwhelm another being and their right to exist, be it animal, mineral, element, or human, and the plants as well. You might ask, how is this podcast, Marita, an indigenous teaching? Because it allows the circleness and the space to say the words in the beginning. To know that humans weren't the first created. To know that we are something created, manufactured. That this world does not belong to us. We were only asked to steward it for the amount of time we were allowed here. And that amount of time depends on how we treat with grace, mercy, and compassion, not from conquering and overcoming the beings and the ways of the wild on this planet and the nature that exists outside of the human body and inside. So today, we're just going to be doing a very short meditation to synthesize this. And this meditation is based on the ik breath. The ik breath is much more than those 3 breaths. We do a lot of other teachings, and I hope that you, if you're in Australia in May, that you are able to check out our launch of Indigenous breathing practices that we have finally been able to allow to weave together and to share and to teach. The idea of ik, the imagery of ik in the calendar, means it is an element, it is a nawal, it is counted in, it is a part of existence. It is a direction, it is a beingness. And so by connecting to this imagery of beingness as something created before humans, the teachings hold the possibility of true interconnected rewilding, because wind does not act alone or in the absence of creation. So just start to settle into your space and take a few breaths any way that you find available to you. If you want to lower your gaze or hold it softly or lie down or dance around while we do this, we're just literally going to do our 3 breaths. One of the ik breath practices that we practice here and in all the classes at the Path of Ish and Cuatro Manos Cinco Volcanes. And this breath is to help you remember, to allow you the space to recognize how separate you are, how separate you have been made, how it has been quote unquote normalized to be separate, to normalize how the war inside of you is always trying to overcome parts of you. I was on Instagram today and I saw something. I'm trying to bring it up now. Here it is, and it's by Khalil Gibran. I don't know if to say that said, and the quote is, "And God said, love your enemy. And I obeyed him and loved myself." First, let us acknowledge that we have created the other inside of us. If we spent the time with that, instead of trying to make other people, taking the war outside of us and trying to make other people like us, as we say in our classes, staying in our lane, we recognize that the greatest gift that we can give ourselves, our families, the planet Earth, and all of humanity is the radical self-acceptance of who we are, how we operate, even biologically, emotionally, physically, and mentally, spiritually, psychically. And from that radical honesty with ourselves, face what we are okay with and face what we are not okay with. And in that journey, finding and loving the enemy inside of us. So let us take our 3 breaths. Settling in. This first breath In and out through the nose. And if you want to count 4 in, 4 out, go ahead. I like doing 3, but you do you, boo. And truly welcoming and acknowledging the physical reality and existence of our body, that which we are aware of and that which we are unaware of. Second breath in and out through the nose. Acknowledging, accepting the reality of our mind and how it is set. The reality of it as something that processes and runs the course of our life. In and out through the nose. Acknowledging this vital force of life inside of us, this essence that in its wildness has not been tamed down to a soul, but that in and of its nature craves and seeks and is programmed to find a way of peace with the mind, find a way of peace with the body. That is its question. Can it? How will it? When will it? Not because it's trying to overcome the human body or the human mind. When essences do not respect the body or the mind, they will misuse them, overwork them, overwhelm them. So here is where we do the work. Not to get over ourselves or overcome, but to acknowledge the wildness of who we are, not to tame, but to start to work together. Final breath in and out through the nose. Giving thanks for circle, for the east, the south, the west, and the north. Giving thanks for all of you who are here. Giving thanks to my teachers who have allowed me to share and to teach these lessons of connectivity, of potential, and of remembrance. Shade. Once again, I hope to see you next week here or in one of our many circles that we have, our community circles, our Patreon circles, our Cuatro Manos y Cinco Volcanes Farms circles. Until then, may you find a way not to overcome yourself, but to accept yourself wholly. Once again, it is with deepest gratitude that I bow to you for joining me on this podcast, this episode, this circle, this plática, this meditation, this remembering. I hope that you have stayed curious. I hope to see you in the circle again next week. So make sure that you like or follow. Until then, may you be blessed with abundance of peace and radical self-love.